All right, well, welcome back to Ben Talks Talent Conversations. Today we have Francine, who is the Director of Talent Acquisition for Planta. It is a chain of restaurants that I actually personally love, so it's a real treat to have her on today. Francine, how are you doing?
I cannot complain. I am in South Florida. The weather is absolutely gorgeous. I am sorry to anybody who lives in colder weather at this moment, but this is our best weather yet, so I cannot complain.
Yeah, that really hit for me because yesterday in Wisconsin, where I'm at, it was 70 degrees. Okay. Today, when I left my house, it was 16 degrees, and the wind was like so rigid walking from my car to like the off. It was actually quite terrible. So
I applaud you.
that's me.
I applaud
That's
you.
me
That
who
is,
you're apologizing to. I have the
I'm
key
apologizing
demographic
to you.
living in Wisconsin. That is me.
How are you
Um,
doing, Ken?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm not like South Beach good, but I'm pretty good. Um, so I wanted to start off because you mentioned when we first talked in our conversation prior to this one that you've been in hospitality since you were 13 years old, and
Mhm.
you've been doing this for a long time and you've evolved your career. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey? I feel like that would be a great place to start.
Yeah. I mean, I think I got into hospitality like a lot of people have, not knowing what it is. It's like, oh yeah, I hear that you get great tips and you have a flexible schedule, right? So really going off of that idea, I was obviously underage and probably not at the legal working age then. But all in all, I definitely did find a passion in hospitality from the age of 13. um, that was just like a local Chinese restaurant where I grew up. And from there, just got into full service, serving, bartending, really climbed the ladder. And then from there, I was part of a group called BJ's Restaurant and Brew House, which is out of California. And they were going through a mass expansion. So they had like a new restaurant opening team, and so as part of the new restaurant opening team, I opened as a server and bartender. I opened 6 locations with them. So it was
Okay.
super cool. It's just like, really experiencing a restaurant being trained and kind of built from the ground up. And that sparked my curiosity for how do they find talent, right? How do we know like who the right fit is? What are we looking for, right? How does that vary from restaurant to restaurant? From many different angles. And so that sparked that curiosity. I got into management, and then after getting into management, I was just kind of browsing, and I found like a hospitality recruitment position. I applied for it, just kind of taking a chance. I had no recruitment experience. And so ironically, the company and the practice leader at the time, the person that I was going to be reporting into, he was looking for somebody who just had hospitality experience, and he felt that he can teach the recruitment side of it. So it was
Okay.
the perfect blend there. And so I owe him so much that I've learned, about recruitment, about hospitality in general. And it was really an amazing foundation for recruitment. I think that every recruiter should experience a firm, first and foremost, like a recruitment firm, and understand the hustle that goes behind, being a retained search firm, having to actually search and being a true like headhunter, right?
Yeah.
And so, kind of fast forward to where I am today. Planta was, I was with the firm for about 4 years, and Planta was just the perfect blend of my passion background and and recruitment, which I love as well, right? So blending the two and being able to join an organization that first I was passionate about. Second piece, that I was able to build and create a talent acquisition department from the ground up, was a project that was really, really exciting to me. And so I started off as a talent acquisition leader. And then after, I mean, I've been at the company for 3.5 years at Planta. So now, I'm the director of talent acquisition. I have been able to grow a team. We have scaled. I mean, I've opened 11 restaurants with Planta, which has been incredible.
Wow.
And so it's really filled my cup in so many different ways.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. There's a few things you said that I really resonated with. I totally agree that everyone should spend some time, if they're going to be in recruitment, as a headhunter. And the amount of hustle required to succeed and even exist in that role for any period of time is real. And there's only really one way to experience that, and that's to go through it. And I learned so much sitting in that seat. And then the other thing I was thinking of when you're talking about building restaurants, I recently like binged The Bear, and I was just thinking about like them building the restaurants, and that was like in my head a little bit. And but that's really cool. That's awesome. I didn't 11 restaurants. That's quite a bit.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
been an incredible journey. I mean, we learn from our mistakes, right? And with every restaurant opening, we have seen such an evolution and everything. I mean, from recruitment to onboarding to training to, opening day, and just being able to have a front row seat to that evolution has truly been incredible.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so I I want to start by just getting your advice because I think it's really valuable to get advice for the audience from people other than me. And so if you were to give advice to candidates who were interested in pursuing like an exciting but competitive opportunity, maybe it's in a restaurant they really want to work in, or maybe it's just any field, any job, what would be your advice to candidates, if they wanted to pursue it, and maybe get to the point of interviewing? What would be your general advice to them on how to succeed?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because I feel that we're really losing the essence of interviewing.
Mm.
It has changed so drastically, from the candidate's perspective, right? And I think a candidate can also speak to the interview process on our end, right? I really want to say that we pride ourselves in executing the most seamless conversational, high touch, high communication process is something that me and my team, we're very, very passionate about. But we obviously would have our struggles as well. But the interview process and the way candidates carry themselves in an interview have changed drastically, and you really have to pivot and just really pivot in the direction that the industry is moving, and pivot to this new evolution of interviewing, right? But it's still there's I'm trying to find a way to change the world sometimes and be able
Yeah,
to, like, how can we give courses? How can we, like, really, be able to drill in the importance of that? But first piece is, I mean, be punctual, right? I think it's so, I mean, it goes without saying, but it has to be said. It's like, be punctual, be 5 minutes early, right? If you have a video interview, make sure you're testing out the software first, test out the Zoom call, make sure everything's is working appropriately. If you're in person, I think the best grace period is a 5 minute grace period. You don't want to get there too early, because it shows a little bit of lack of consideration, but early enough to get yourself situated. So that's the first piece, kind of goes without saying. And I think it's important to, if you're doing a little bit of prep work, do a thorough research of the company. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to people and they're like, remind me who you are again, because I've applied to a million positions, right? And it's just
yeah,
like, that's fine. You can apply to a million positions. I understand you're actively looking, but I don't think that's something that needs to be communicated, right? And so I think it's important to do a thorough research on the company, just so we have a lucrative conversation. Like, I can answer questions about, like, things that you might not be able to find online, and that is so important for their education, right? I already know about the company, but for them to
yeah,
be a little bit more educated, to be able to make a well-informed decision. Um, and then, we look at the resume before, right? We're already seeing all the bullet points and all the achievements. Give us your unique strengths. Give us something that
mm,
we don't see on the piece of paper, right?
yeah,
Your unique strengths, your experiences, right? But elaborate on them. But showcase that passion. There's nothing worse than somebody that's just kind of, it seems like they're reading from bullet points or from maybe a sheet that they have on the side without really showcasing that passion. And so, especially in hospitality, you either love it or you don't. There's never a gray area in hospitality because it's a very difficult industry. So you really have to showcase that passion. Um, and just, be confident, be articulate, show again that enthusiasm, right? Or that passion. Um, and then just seal it with thoughtful questions, right?
Yeah,
Asking questions that, again, you would find online or you would find on the job posting, happy to answer them. But are those
yeah,
really thoughtful questions, right? Are you truly interested in the role? Are you truly interested in Planta? Or are you interested in the next opportunity that can, the next opportunity because of whatever's happening, right? So I
yeah.
think those are the main points that I think are the most important pieces to making sure that you have a successful interview.
Yeah, and those are great tips, and I agree with every single thing you said. I always call it your unfair advantage, what differentiates you as a candidate. So, if you go into an interview, what do you have that other candidates might not have that's going to elevate you? And I think that's really important. Passion. People buy passion. There's not a hiring manager in the world who doesn't want to talk to a candidate who's passionate about what they do. I hear sometimes people say, well, can we normalize just going to work to go to work? And I'm like, yeah, maybe, but not in the interview. Like, you don't want to do that then. Like, that is just not going to go over well. And, the great questions are really a differentiator too. So I agree with everything you said. I mean, those are great bullets, and I couldn't agree more. So I hope people who are job seeking, who are listening to this video, took down some notes, because I do agree with that completely.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned in your answer, are you interested in Planta, or are you just interested in another opportunity? I'd actually love to talk about Planta a little bit. So Planta, for those of you who are watching this, is a plant-based restaurant with multiple locations. I've been to two of them. I am a vegetarian. If you're watching my channel for years and you didn't know that, I am. And I love Planta. I thought it was awesome. We've been multiple times to multiple of them. Could you just tell us a little bit about your organization and like the challenges for recruiting, not just in your industry, which I'm sure has plenty of challenges, but for a very unique style of restaurant? Could you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that, when I first started at Planta, I thought we would have it would be a little more challenging to recruit for plant-based concepts. And I'm not talking about, I would say more leaning towards like the chefs, the the line
Yeah,
cooks, anybody who's cooking the food, because when you're a chef, you're an artist. When you're an artist, you want to create, right, things
yeah,
that speak to you. If you're not plant-based, are you truly going to be passionate about cooking plant-based cuisine? And ironically, it wasn't it really hasn't possessed a lot of challenges.
mm,
I've maybe had a couple people trickle in and say, yeah, that's just not food I'm passionate about, but I wouldn't say it's enough to like truly make an impact and be like, whoa, like, this is really limiting our ability to be able to hire great talent at all. There is such a huge curiosity for plant-based cuisine. And so there's a lot of people who in the interview process are just like, I want to see what you guys do. I mean, it's so unique, right? And just looping into the piece of us being so different and unique, right? It's very few restaurant chains. I mean, you probably come across a couple restaurants or local spots that have a similar approach to as Planta does in terms of dining, in terms of the food, but you don't really see at 16 restaurants, right? Just having like, this plant-based product that everybody loves. And so I think that's the main thing, right? So going back to the history of Planta, we started in 2016 when our CEO decided to be plant-based. And with that mindset, at that point, you would go out to eat and you would completely miss out on an experience because give me a side of vegetables, maybe some potatoes that don't have any animal products kind of
yeah,
entangled in it, right? So huge limitation, and so you're really limiting that experience, right, of going out to eat. For that, like you might as well not eat and just eat at home. And so the point of
yeah,
Planta is if we were to target the plant-based community, we would be limiting ourselves tremendously, right? It's a
mhm,
matter of making healthy, delicious, vegetable forward food accessible to anyone, no matter what their restrictions are, what their lifestyle preferences are when it comes down to food and dining. Everybody will have a good time. Everybody will enjoy a delicious meal and they will walk out of Planta feeling satisfied. And that's really the idea behind Planta. We don't, we pigeonholing ourselves to just a plant-based community, we would be limiting ourselves tremendously.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I couldn't agree more. If tomorrow I woke up, and I don't anticipate this happening, but I decided no longer to be a vegetarian, I would still eat at Planta because
Mhm.
the food is delicious and the restaurants themselves are beautiful. I've only been to South Beach, Florida, and the Chicago locations, but they're very different. They're very beautiful, and the food was awesome. So,
Yeah.
um, if I was trying to like impress someone who ate meat and be like, "Oh, you should try some plant," like it would be number one on my list. You said I've probably encountered similar themed restaurants. I can't say that I have, not with the quality of Planta and the aesthetic, because it truly is like a high aesthetic. The vibes are on point. And I don't know if that's normally the case.
Yeah,
So
no, yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of the plant-based concepts that I've been to have been a little more like fast casual.
yeah,
Like I said, a little bit more local spots, like that counter service, and then maybe a couple that have been full service, but not to the scale, size, and aesthetics of
yeah,
Planta, and it just doesn't feel like what a typical plant-based restaurant would feel like, right?
yeah, not at all, not at all. Um, I wanted to talk about just the challenges you've experienced in hiring. You talked a little bit earlier about a changing dynamic and adapting. And as someone who is involved in hiring and has seen, so you said you've been with Planta for like 3.5 years, and I can't think of a more interesting 3.5 years in the history of talent acquisition. I feel like it has been an incredibly dynamic 3 years. I would love to hear you just talk about like the challenges you've experienced in hiring in general, and to speak to like the state of the market and your perspective on it as someone who is actively involved in it and recruiting and hiring and team building.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you said it well there, Ben. I mean, the last 3.5 years have been probably the most challenging years for not only recruitment, but for hospitality.
Yeah.
I started mid-pandemic with Planta. We were all wearing masks. We were in the restaurant, and we were in the process of opening up Coco Walk, our Coco Walk location, mid-pandemic. We were gonna do career fair a week after I started. And again, no talent acquisition team, right? Just kind of trying to figure it out. And so the pandemic really created such a shift in the industry. I mean, the majority of the industry left, right? People who worked in the industry left. I don't blame them. It's they kind of got burned by the fact that there was, the hospitality got hit the hardest, right?
Yeah.
Hospitality, travel, right? All those leisures, they got hit the hardest, and so a lot of people left, right? And with that, where before we were a little more focused on resumes, right? A little more focused on seeing what their background and experiences, we really had to open our minds to say, okay, well, you know, do they have the willingness to learn, right? Do they have the passion for the industry that we need, and we can teach them everything else, right? So again, pivoting, adaptability, right, and adapting to what was going on in the market. So we had a lot of people that have never been in the industry, and we had to truly open up our minds to being like, all right, let's give them a shot. And where before we would give a chance to somebody who wasn't in the industry, but maybe start as a busser, right? Maybe start in a position where, we can then help them grow and understand the flow of a restaurant, where we were a little bit more open-minded to somebody even in a management capacity that came from another industry. And so I thought that was a really positive shift. I really truly thought that was a positive shift, because where we were so focused on only having people within hospitality, especially in a leadership capacity, really expanded our minds to be able to, to give an opportunity to people who really wanted to get into hospitality but just couldn't because they didn't have that resume or that experience. So I think that was a positive piece. But yeah, I mean, COVID itself, I can have probably a 30-minute conversation with you about all the challenges that we faced through
Yeah.
COVID. Obviously, it was truly challenging to recruit, because so many people were burned and they left the industry. Same way that we were open to hiring somebody who had experience elsewhere, there were other companies that were also open to hiring people who had experience within hospitality that maybe they wouldn't have had a shot then. So um but overall, I would say, in the industry in general, some of the challenges would be, we have higher turnover rates, right?
Yeah.
We have a lot of entry level positions. A lot of our positions are supplemental income, right? For students, for people just trying to get, it's really, I don't want to say it's really rare, but it's not very common to have somebody come into hospitality and like say, yes, I want to grow within the industry, I want to be a manager, I want to be a chef, right? A lot of it is like just additional supplemental income, to help them get through their years of school or help them get them out of a bind, or just a side job, right? So with that, there's a lot of turnover. Combine that during COVID and post COVID um, with all the challenges going on in the market, all the restaurants desperate for employees, incredibly understaffed, where they couldn't even open for one service or another because they didn't have the right staff. And if they did and they were able to open, the experiences for the guests were horrific, right? Because we were short staffed. And so we kind of had our hands tied. And so that, if for some reason like Planta did something, or an employee wasn't making enough money, or they were like, all right, the restaurant next door is already hiring, they're going to give me a couple more dollars, I'm going there, right? So a lot of those challenges really came up on COVID, and now I see a little bit more stability in the market, which is great, to finally get that that bit of air back in our lungs. And so, but overall, consistently, we have high turnover rates, and
Yeah.
that goes without saying, and that will continue to happen in hospitality. Another thing is finding skilled talent. And why? Because when you think about, and especially positions that are, again, more creative, right? If you're talking about an executive chef, if you're talking about a bartender or a server, or a sous chef or a line cook, they're not active on Indeed, they're not active on LinkedIn, they're not active on the computer, they're creating, they're working with their hands, right? So it's like, it's really like, again, just a pivot for anybody who recruits for any other industry, to understand, how are we going to get creative, how are we going to reach that community, how are we going to reach those people? Because it's not going to be on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
It's maybe on Indeed, but you have to get creative. Social media platforms, chefs always post their dishes, they love to showcase their dishes, right? That's one
Yeah.
platform. What we used to do in when I worked at the firm, at the recruitment firm, it was just reach out to them directly, right? And try to find their number somehow, whether it was an article that they wrote, or, like just really
Yeah.
trying to get creative. Um, or calling restaurants and being like, hey, who's a chef? Like, give me first and then you look them up, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, so things like that, to really get creative, because they are not going to be active on social media or any digital platform. So finding skilled talent is another piece that has been challenging. Wage pressure, right? I mean, again, just going back to COVID, right? I think a lot of that changed. And just, looping back to the point of like, if it's not working out here, if I'm not making the money that I have to make, if I'm not getting the schedule that I need, if that restaurant is going to pay me $2 more an hour, I'm going to shift over, right? Again, that really loops in with the high turnover rates as well. And so that wage pressure, again, we've seen a little bit more stability now, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. But post pandemic, there was a high demand for higher wages, and you have no other choice but to get yourself there, even if we are going against the budget of what the restaurant is making, right? So
Yeah.
that was really challenging, and still continues to be there is definitely a lot of wage pressure. And hospitality is seasonal. Hospitality is very seasonal.
Yeah.
Our hiring needs are seasonal, right? And it depends on the market. In, we are cross country, right? We have California, we have New York, we have Miami, we have Toronto, all completely different high seasons, low seasons, right? So really being able to be proactive when you're hiring and make sure you understand what the market trends are throughout the year, and when we need to staff and when we need to, kind of settle down a bit and understand how we're going to take care of the team that we have currently, to make sure they're still maximizing their time and hours. Because if their hours are cut, again, going back, they're going to leave and seek something else elsewhere because there's a lot of competition.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the last thing is technology, the impact that technology has made. Um, less patience out there. I always say time kills deals. If we
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
have a flow, if we don't have a steady process where we're constantly communicating and fast and keeping them engaged, they're gonna, whether it's a leadership capacity, whether it is, a line cook, whatever it is, timing will kill all deals.
Yeah.
So, and utilizing technology for that, right? There's so many AI tools that we are currently looking into, just to increase engagement in our applicants and being able to have a quicker flow and interview process where we can automate scheduling and interviewing. So,
Yeah.
um, and that's it. That's about it.
Yeah. I love that. And speed is so important. And time kills all deals is something that was drilled into my head in my first agency job, like over and over and over again. So to me, that's just another value of having someone who has that foundational piece of learning the industry from an agency perspective, then transitioning over into the corporate perspective, is they understand the role that speed plays in successful hiring. So I love that. I want to finish with one more thing. What are you passionate about outside of work? So this is like, okay, TA aside, what is it that you'd like to talk about if you said, hey, this is something I'm just passionate about?
So super ironic, right? Because my job, my role at Planta, or just in recruitment, it really drains my social battery, right? I'm always talking to people. I'm always in the best way. I mean, I truly love building relationships and connections. I wouldn't be doing
Yeah.
what I do if it wasn't for that. So truly, truly love it. But when I get home, I literally want to sit in silence. When I'm in the car, I am in silence, right? So
Yeah.
ironically, my one of my hobbies is I'm a spin instructor.
Okay.
Clearly, social battery hasn't ran out. I'm sitting at 10% with a
Yeah.
little yellow color on it. Like, maybe no, actually I'm on red. But it's ironic because sometimes, I mean, it's additional motivation, right? It's additional motivation, but I think there is just a component of spinning that helps me just like release all that energy, right? Of my day, and it's truly rewarding. It's truly rewarding to be able to motivate people. So they kind of go hand in hand in a weird way. But then
Yeah.
after spinning, like I just literally want silence. And so my another hobby that I have, which kind of stabilizes what I'm trying to get to here, is I like to scuba dive. And scuba dive
Oh,
is when you
cool.
get utmost silence. Like nobody
Yeah.
can talk to you. Like all you hear is the bubbles and the ocean and the water. And there it's a one time where I don't think. I'm just present.
Yeah.
And so that's how it kind of stabilizes my other crazy social life.
Yeah. Okay, I lied. One more quick question. What is the coolest
Okay.
place you've ever scuba dived? What's like the coolest location?
Cayman Islands.
Okay.
I did. So they have the abyss, which some places have. Well, most places have the abyss, which is where it takes like it's a wall. So there's like a
Yeah.
big dip in depth. So I always wanted to scuba the abyss. I first off, like petrified,
Yeah.
nervous, right? All you see is blue on one side, and then you still have the core on one side, but anything can pop out at you from that direction. But it's truly remarkable. I mean, I felt like I was scuba diving through like mountain ranges, right?
Yeah.
Underwater.
Oh, cool.
And it was truly an experience. It was a depth that I've never gone to, which was 100 feet. So that one was a little scary.
Yeah.
Um,
That's no
but yeah,
joke.
that was the best one to date.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, tell you what, Francine, I appreciate you taking the time to chat today. I appreciate your perspective and your advice for the listeners. So thank you so much for jumping on the pod and talking today.
Of course. No, I appreciate you, Ben. Thank you so much. And it was truly a pleasure.